Right, DevOps community of practice. That's what I'm here to talk to you about today. So listen, the systems that we're building are extremely complex. We are scaling out the number of systems that we have. We're scaling out the complexity of those applications. We're scaling out the number of people that are required to work on those applications. Not only that, but the innovation that's happening within our space is moving at an ever-increasing rate. And the things that we're building live for an even shorter amount of time. How many of you remember going on IRC and saying, I just ran uptime on this machine, and it's been up for 987 days? And how many of you recently went into Slack and said, this container has been running for 987 seconds. What the hell is wrong? We are completely changed. We have this complexity that we can no longer manage in our own heads. We cannot picture all of the complexity and all of the different intricacies and inner workings of everything. And in addition to that, our business partners, our customers are telling us that we must move faster. There's this tremendous pressure on us all to move faster, to move at the speed of our customers, at the speed of business. And it's very difficult. But at the end of all of this complexity and this request for speed, all our customers want is a great experience. All our customers want is to be able to take their phone out of their pocket, push a button, and have a stranger come pick them up and take them wherever they want to go. Do you remember the first time you rode in a Lyft and how magical that experience was? It wasn't magical for you? Yes? Okay, yeah. Like, this is the experience that our customers want all the time. Our jobs are no longer racking and stacking servers. Our jobs are thinking about that customer and serving them. So we are all in this room on a journey. I don't know if you call that journey a DevOps journey, a digital transformation, a modernization of your IT practices and your infrastructure, a modernization of your applications. It doesn't matter what you call that journey. All of us in the technology space are going through this journey. And it starts with an awakening. An awakening that says, number one, we have to change if we want to succeed. IT is no longer a back office service. It's no longer a back office system. In fact, we, the technologists, and the technology that we build, we are driving the businesses forward. We're driving our customers' experiences. We are integral to the business. And from that awakening, we move to a place where we have continuous everything. We need to do everything all the time. Continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous building. But most importantly, continuous learning. How many of you are focused on that? Continuous learning. That's a huge thing that we have to think about. And from that, we start to get to this idea where it's no longer about the number of lines of code that you've written. It's no longer about the number of deploys that you've done, but it's about the outcomes that you're delivering. How are your customers feeling? What is the customer experience? Are you driving that business forward? What are the outcomes that we're working towards? And I have to tell you that it's not technology alone that will save you. It's not technology that allows us to get to continuous everything. It's not technology alone that allows us to get to this customer-centric view of the world. It is both our culture and our technology. And the idea that you can separate the two, we're going to bring in a new tool and that's going to fix everything. That's not going to fix everything. The idea that you can change your culture and that will fix everything with the existing tooling, that is not going to fix everything for you either. Your culture and your technology are linked. The technology choices that we make are amplified by and themselves amplify our culture. And the culture choices that we make within our organizations reinforce and amplify the technology choices that we've made. We cannot separate these two. We are all together focused on that customer outcome. To me, that's what DevOps is about, when we're all on the same page. And I'll share more about DevOps at the end. But what does this mean for us organizationally? One thing that it means for us is we have these IT structures that are very service-oriented. Let's put together all of the application engineers on one team. Let's put all of the infrastructure engineers on one team, the security engineers on another team, the network engineers on another team. This very layered approach to how we approach IT. And each one of these layers is responsible for serving a different customer. But usually they don't even serve the customer. What they serve is a line of business. So my job is not to serve the customer. My customer is the business. How many of you have the business as your customer in here? Yeah. How many of you no longer have the business as your customer in here? Yeah. There's a couple that are in a better place. It's not because the business is terrible. But when we have this layered approach, another sort of outcome of that, or a way that we practice that, is through creating centers of excellence. How many of you have or are part of a center of excellence within your organization? That is awesome. There are quite a few of you. You might not like me in a minute. So centers of excellence, here's the idea behind a center of excellence. We're going to bring together a group of people that understand a technology or that understand a practice. And we're going to ask that center of excellence to come up with and create best practices and send those out to the people. But there are real problems with this. First, that center of excellence is focused on pushing information out. How many of you right now do not work in a center of excellence? Raise your hand. Be proud of that. You are the masses of mediocrity. Yes, that's what we are. Don't you want to be in the center of excellence? Wouldn't it be better if you were excellent instead of mediocre? Man, I hate centers of excellence. The other challenge with the center of excellence, let's just flip the coin. Let's think about empathy from the people within the center of excellence. Here I am up on the pedestal. I am in the center of excellence. I'm being asked to create best practices. If I push out best practices and they aren't actually best practices, I'm going to get blamed for that. So maybe it takes me longer to come up with practices. Maybe it takes longer for me to come up with standards that I want to push out. And then what happens when you don't follow those standards or those practices aren't followed? Who gets blamed? Well, maybe you're going to blame the center of excellence. Those were shitty practices. Maybe I'm going to blame you. That was a shitty implementation of my best practices. They're called best practices for a reason. Why didn't you do that? So all of this is to say we should get rid of our centers of excellence. And I'll come back to what we should replace it with in just a minute. This idea, though, of service-oriented IT. One of the challenges with this is it's this layer cake approach. So I'm from the state of Maryland. Anyone else from Maryland? What's up, my people? All right, there we go, my people. Do you know Smith Island cakes? Have you heard of Smith Island cakes? Smith Island is an island in the state of Maryland in the Chesapeake Bay, and they make these cakes. And they're known because they are extreme number of layers. So if your organization, if your IT organization feels like this, it might be tasty, but you're doing it wrong. So why is that wrong? Well, each one of these services has multiple customers that they're serving. So when an individual line of business comes to you and hands you a requirement or puts a ticket into your queue, how do you prioritize that? I'm serving 8 different customers, and they've all put work into my queue, whether that's a ticket queue or a Kanban board. How do I prioritize that work? I don't have the right context to do that. So I'm going to take the work that, I don't know, feels right. I'm going to take the work that my manager told me to take. That's not a great way of working. So what happens then is we move slow. So the business starts to take control. IT moves too slow for me, so what I need to do is serve my customers. I'm going to use as little of those services as I possibly can. I'm going to launch my own shadow IT initiatives. I'm going to hire engineers into my team and use as little of that as possible. Sometimes the business just says, you know what, IT is so slow, I'm not even going to use them. I'm going off to the cloud. I can plop down a credit card, bring in some smart people into my team, and I don't even need IT anymore. Why do they do this? Why don't they love us? So I'd like to bring up a friend of mine, Will Moore. Will is, I'm going to let Will introduce himself. I feel like if I'm talking about community, it's hard to do that as an individual. So Will, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Will Moore. I actually work for Aaron's. Some of you may have heard of it as Aaron Rents. We're a rent-to-own company, and I've been there about 5 years. Started out as a senior engineer and moved into a management and now a director role. managing a small team of, I don't like to call them DevOps engineers, but delivery engineers. DevOps is not a person, it is a philosophy and a way of working.
Preach it.
I don't like to, we're trying to move, the team started out as the DevOps team, and we're trying to move away from that.
Yeah. It's tough to be the DevOps team. You know, we have so many silos in our organization. I know how we'll fix it. We'll create another silo. We'll call it the DevOps team, right?
Exactly what we did.
But it's cool. If you're on a DevOps team, it's okay. It's okay. And if getting the title DevOps engineer got more money on your paycheck, then more power to you. Like, that is awesome. You should continue to do that. Maybe SRE is your next goal in your career. Even if you don't change the work, if you change the pay, like, maybe that's okay. But Will, so you at Aaron's had this sort of layer cake approach to IT, and you've changed that. Talk about how you've changed that within your team.
Okay, so about 2 years ago, the inspiration for our change was the Spotify engineering model. Some of you may have heard of it. We kind of took that approach. We hired a new development director at the time, and he kind of socialized that. And we had already been having problems with a lot of context switching, which, you know, in that layer cake approach, you've got many customers. I was sitting in meetings getting yelled at about, hey, you're not getting to my stuff fast enough. I don't know how to prioritize, you know, one line of business over the other. So what we did was we basically broke up the band. Our team, it's a team of 7 people with a lot of infrastructure experience and background that wanted to move into more of a, you know, DevOps style of working. We brought in Chef, we were doing scripting, writing cookbooks, decided to break that up and embed engineers in the line of business product teams.
So you had this vertical integration where you said, okay, instead of doing Chef with the rest of your Chef friends, go over and do that same work, that automation work within the line of business. And so that gave you a better context of what are we trying to accomplish here, right?
Much better.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things about sitting in that service layer is you're taking in work and you don't really know, like, this thing you're telling me to do, I don't know what that's providing to the business. And I like to take ownership of stuff like that and see what impact it's making. So,
right, and so sometimes when you get asked just to take this work, and again, you don't know how to prioritize it, so maybe you prioritize the loudest voice in the room. Whoever's shouting the loudest, they win. But also because you don't have that context, maybe you're doing work that there might be a better way to accomplish that same goal.
absolutely.
Right? But one of the benefits, though, of that layer cake approach is that all of your network engineers sit together and they're on the same team. All of your automation engineers sit together and they're on the same team. So they have this ability to share the work that they're doing with one another and share the code that they're doing. So how do you work around that?
So that is one of the challenges of having a dispersed team. I only have one of the people on my team sitting near me. So from a management perspective, I don't get to see the everyday banter and the things that are going on. And then from an engineering perspective, when people are kind of siloed in a team, even though they're adding value in that team, they're missing that identity as the greater, engineering services team, delivery engineers. There's
right.
no one sitting with them. So what we do is we meet once a week as a team. We've landed on doing a lean coffee style approach meeting.
So can you just describe lean coffee for us?
So it's basically the team makes the agenda. It's an evolving agenda. The last thing I want to do is get into meetings and, me speak the whole time because people have stuff to talk about. They want to, the idea is to share ideas that and share tooling that people are using across the teams to make us all better. We landed on that after a couple of iterations of different things, but it's worked out really well.
That's super cool. I had the pleasure of joining one of Will's team meetings earlier this week, and it was really interesting to hear a couple of different engineers who are on the same, like they're focused on the same automation, but in different parts of the org. One bringing up a challenge, and immediately someone directly across the table said, oh, you know what, we have a PowerShell script that can actually address that. You might need to switch some of the configuration parameters out, but here it is, and let's sit down and work on that together. So you can have the benefit of having that team working together, but also have the benefit that that team has the full context of what it is that they're delivering to the customer.
Right. Yeah, another cool part of that is we often go off the rails in that meeting, and it turns into a therapy session, which is awesome.
Yes.
Because people get to talk about, pain points, and we talk it out, and I think it really helps. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, Will, thanks so much for sharing your experience with us.
Yeah,
And
appreciate it.
all right. So Will's around, and thank you. Will is around for the rest of the day, I suspect, and a bunch of his team is here as well, so you can talk to them about their experience. But I like to think of this as building a community of practice around that specific thing, whether it's security or network or automation. How do we bring those people together and allow them the time and the space, and importantly, the safety to discuss with one another? Now, the other thing I think that's really cool is that lean coffee format really has that emergent agenda. Just like what you're experiencing here at DevOps Days with the open spaces, we have the emergent agenda. I see a lot of rants on Twitter about people who are sick and tired of going to meetings. How many of you are sick and tired of going to meetings? Yeah, me too. And usually those are around if there's no agenda, if there aren't immediate outcomes coming out of this meeting, if I don't know why I'm going there, I'm not coming to it. And you know what? I give you permission. Don't go to those meetings. It's cool. But there are other types of meetings where there is no agenda up front. How many of you had trouble convincing your boss, hey, I want to go to this thing called DevOps Days. They have content for the morning, and the afternoon is open spaces. There is no agenda, but I have to be there all day. Anyone have trouble convincing your boss to send you and pay for your ticket here? Yeah. That's why these meetings, like these events, aren't open spaces all day, because it's hard to figure out what will the agenda be. But how many of you enjoyed the open spaces yesterday? You all can lie. Just everybody put your hand up. It's cool. Like, those are the amazing part of this conference. And that idea of having an emergent agenda where the objective going into that agenda is to learn. The objective going into that agenda is to make human connections and build that sense of community. That is super powerful. So I think that we should strike down our centers of excellence, and we should replace those with communities of practice. So first, it's a community. I want to welcome everyone into the community. And then the other thing that's important there, it's a community of practice. Some organizations I work with have moved away from centers of excellence, and what they've created are communities of interest. It's cool that you're interested in this topic, but we're not going to make cultural change by talking about it. We're not going to make cultural change by being interested in it. We will only make our changes that we need to, whether it's cultural or technology, through practice. So in this community of practice, I want to invite everyone in, and I want to do the practices that are required. So a community of practice is really about being collaborative. How do we work together as a community? How can we be inclusive? Everyone in the organization is invited in. I don't care which part of the organization you work with. If you are interested in learning more about automation, come into our community of practice. If you're worried or interested in learning more about security or QA, come into our community of practice. You can bring in ideas and perspectives that we don't have already within this community. The community itself is inclusive, whereas a center of excellence is very exclusive. Center of excellence, you have to be invited in. You have to be promoted into that center of excellence. And when you come to ideas from the outside into the center of excellence, you're just part of the mediocre masses. Whatever you have to say can't be excellent. So we don't want to listen to your opinion here. So we really need to be inclusive. And then it's that important bit there that it is a community of practice. We do change. Events cause us to change our culture. Practicing new ways of working, practicing new technology helps us implement that technology, helps us change our culture. One of the big things that we can do as leaders, or that you can ask of your leaders, is to align the incentives and objectives of your teams. And this is really where DevOps started. DevOps, the word, is development and operations, and it started with this perverse objectives that we gave to those two different teams. Developers, your job, ship the best features you can as fast as possible. Operations, it's your job to keep the systems up and stable. So your job now is to say no to any change. I don't want to accept any new features because that introduces risk. That introduces things that might break into the system. So we're fighting against each other. As an organization, we need to step back and look at how are we paying our people? How are we incentivizing our people? Who gets the promotions? Is the work that we're incentivizing people to do work that will help change move through the system? Or is it focused on your slice of the environment? We're going to make you the best at that. But if you're not the bottleneck or your team isn't the bottleneck, improvements there don't matter. We have to make the work visible. Including everyone in the work, making the work visible to everyone is extremely important. By making the work visible, we allow everyone to see the context. We allow everyone to see the work that's happening. One thing that happens in many organizations, a team will put together a lunch and learn. How many of you have been to a lunch and learn before? Yeah, me too. How many of you were surprised about a thing that a team was doing that you had no idea that they were doing that thing? That's the purpose of these lunch and learns. What if there's other ways that we can just practice making our work visible? So things like Kanban boards is a great way to do that. The other really powerful thing about a Kanban board is that it focuses on the flow of work. That's what we're optimizing for. I'm not optimizing the work in a specific team. I'm optimizing the change that needs to move from the beginning of the process all the way through to the end of the process. Failure is an opportunity to learn. Now, I talked about this yesterday when I kicked off my open spaces or proposed my open space. I know you never have production failures, but I have them all the time. It is important that we take those failures as the true investment opportunities that they are. I can't tell you when your systems are going to break, whether it's your human systems, your technology systems. I can't tell you when they're going to break, but I can tell you that they are going to break. You don't have control over when. You might not have control over how. But when those things do break, it is important that you take that opportunity to learn as much as you can. So I have some rules around my postmortems. How do we run a postmortem? The first rule is we invite everyone. And I mean everyone. The entire company gets invited to the postmortem. If that makes you feel a little uncomfortable, don't worry. The entire company will not show up for your postmortem. But if that made you feel uncomfortable, sometimes on my team, we like to run our postmortems and invite everyone. As in, run them on a Google Hangout and live stream them to YouTube. How many of you feel like that's something that would go over well in your organization? Yeah. I didn't care how it would go over. I didn't ask permission, I just did it. Luckily, I'm still working in that organization, so we don't have to learn from that failure. But there are really incredible things that happen when you invite everyone into the room. A friend of mine, Valerie, where's Valerie? Is she here? All right, she's not in the room, so we can totally talk about her. You'll hear from Valerie later. She's going to give an Ignite talk. But she was telling me this amazing story last night of how she got involved in technology. Her husband was a technologist and was up for days troubleshooting an issue. It was 4 a.m. in the morning. He was angry. He was upset. There was no end in sight. And she sat down and started asking him questions. So she wasn't necessarily invited. She brought herself into that incident. She brought herself into the room. And she started asking questions. She brought a different perspective. Eventually, at first, he was kind of annoyed. No, that's not how it works. No, of course it would never, that would never fix it. You don't even know what you're talking about. You're not in this space. You don't know technology. But eventually, she asked a question that opened up his eyes. And he found the answer. And through that question, he resolved that issue. Now think about the power of that, and think about the power of bringing in people who aren't part of your team into your postmortems. What else can you learn from that? That can be a really powerful experience. I'm going to skip these slides because I'm running a little bit short on time, but I do want to give you my definition of the word DevOps. I think it's kind of weird. I've sat through all of the talks and no one has given a definition of DevOps yet at a DevOps Days. So I figured I should just do that for you now. So here's what DevOps is. DevOps is a cultural and professional movement focused on how we build and operate high-velocity organizations that is born from the experience of its practitioners. So it's a cultural and professional movement. It is not a tool. It's not something you can buy. I will sell you, or the people at my company will sell you automation software. But you cannot come to our salespeople and say, hey, chef, I'd like to buy 42 units of DevOps, please, because we're going to go on a DevOps transformation. We're like, well, 42 might not be enough for us to really have a conversation. Don't worry, as this transformation goes, next year we're going to buy 100. All right, now we'll talk, right? That's not how it works. It is a cultural and professional movement. It's focused on how we build and operate high-velocity organizations. Build and operate, dev and ops, right? Bullshit. You want to build a high-velocity organization? You can't do that by focusing in on 2 departments within your organization. It's simply not enough. It's why I might disagree with Chris when he says DevSecOps is a thing. In my definition, security was always there. HR is always there. QA is always there. Finance is there. Marketing is there. HR is there. How many of you consider HR part of your DevOps team? We talk about objectives and incentives and alignment. We talk about in Agile and these practices forming small, short-lived teams. Do your HR policies allow that? Hell, I'll give you an easier question to answer. Does your policy at your organization allow you to physically move where you sit? Can you leave your department and go sit with another group? Is that allowed? Is that encouraged? In some places, it's not. And that simple thing, that simple act of moving where you sit and sitting with someone else, getting to know those people as human beings, going to lunch with those people, hearing about the work that they're doing, you are building community and you are changing the way that your organization works. And it starts there with the experience of its practitioners. It is on us. It is on us in this room to change our organizations. No one is coming in to save you. It is up to you to change the way that the organization works. And the way that you change it is through practice. You go out there and you make the change. You do the change. You fight the battles. You ask the questions. You come with empathy. Try to understand, why are they pushing back on you? Why are they fighting against you? What can you do to change that? Community is our foundation. And just like every other cultural change, you do not get to community by talking about it. How many of you have casual Fridays at your office? Oh, it's casual Friday, I can wear jeans. It's awesome. How many of you have community Wednesdays? It's Wednesday, we're going to community today. Like, that's not how it works. It is a practice. It happens daily, all the time. And the community is the foundation. So I want you to leave here thinking about, what are the customers that your business serves? Do you care about those customers? Do you care about the outcomes that you're trying to deliver, the value that you're trying to deliver to those customers? If the answer to those questions is no, there is a job board right outside this door. Because if you don't care about the customers at your business, what you should do is quit your job today. And go find a place where you do care about the customer outcomes that you're trying to deliver. And I told you that no one is coming to save you. This is on you to do. But look around this room. Look around the organization that you are working in. You have people here to help and support you, people that are going through the same journey. It starts within your organization. Maybe it starts just within your team. Maybe it's just you and your manager, or you and your coworker. But from there it grows, and you've done the big step of coming outside of the 4 walls of your organization, coming to a DevOps Days, and getting involved in the larger community in the local area. How many of you live within 25 miles of here? Look around. All right, maybe 50 miles. I know, like, Atlanta has this sprawl issue, right? Right. These are people that are here to help you. They all care about your success. And you have something to offer to them in the same way that they have something to offer to you. So I just want to leave you with a couple of questions. Because if you go back to your boss and say, man, we need to do more DevOps, he's going to hear what Chris mentioned earlier. Sitting around a campfire, all making s'mores together, singing Kumbaya, and maybe a couple of hugs. Like, how does that help the business? I want you to go back and have open, honest conversations with your colleagues, with your teammates, with the people on the other teams. Questions like these: how do we decrease the time between software deployments? How do we minimize the time required to detect incidents or recover from those incidents? How do we increase collaboration? And I will tell you that as you start to dig into the reasons why these things aren't possible, You're going to uncover cultural challenges, communication challenges, and technology changes. So have open, honest conversations with each other about how do we move this forward. With that, I think it's almost time for lunch, so I would like to say thank you very much for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Yes, the community is here for y'all, right? Like, again, that's DevOps ATL on Meetup. But having an identity as a technologist outside the place you work is important. That way, whatever bullshit is going on at work doesn't get in your head and the imposter syndrome doesn't creep up, because you can get out to a meetup and talk to peers in the community and we can go, you know what, that's really messed up. Like, you're awesome. Like, I'm not sure why you're catching this crufts. And maybe help you sort through it. And to Nathan's point, if not, we can help you find a safe place to move to, right? We want everybody to be as happy as they can be. Do we have questions for Nathen? There's one.
You talked about inviting the entire company to the postmortem.
Yes.
So how did you get past the hurdle of teams thinking that it's not my problem, it's not my job, why should I even
Yeah,
bother
that's a
about
great
it?
question. So the question, if you didn't hear, was you talked about inviting everyone into the postmortems. What about the people that are like, thanks for the invite, I hate meetings, and it's not my job to go to the postmortem. Like, I just wrote the software, or I'm just in marketing, or I'm just in customer support. The thing is, there's a couple of things that you can do. First, you can find the allies that you have in the other parts of the organization and make sure that they come along, right? Go and have those conversations. If you step out of your team and get to know people elsewhere, like you've gone to lunch with someone in legal, just say, hey, why don't you come see how we work? Can I come to one of your meetings? Here's a great meeting for you to come and learn more about what we're doing. Come to our postmortem. If and when that doesn't work, then you start to get your manager or another manager to force someone on their team to come, or bring that manager along. But here's the thing. All it takes is one person outside that comes into that postmortem and has a great experience. When they go back to where they work and talk about the postmortem and what they learned, and oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe the stuff that is happening over here and how they fought through this issue, they will talk about that with their peers. And when you invite them, they will come along. So the first time you invite everyone and no one shows up, don't stop. You have to consistently do it all the time.
It's about creating opportunities.
I've had salespeople come onto a postmortem of ours. Yeah, salespeople. Why do they care? But they were blown away by just the process and what it does. Look, if a system falls over, right, we ask the questions, how could we have detected that sooner? How could we have recovered faster? If a customer in a sales process decides not to buy, how could we have detected that sooner? How could we have resolved that faster? It's the same questions. When you bring in HR, an employee that you love at your company and provides good work left, how could we have detected that sooner? How could we have resolved that faster? How do we change our organization so that we can learn from these failures?
We had a question somewhere over here.
Hey, so for companies that use that would have a center of excellence type model,
Yes.
but they're doing that in an effort to change a direction that development teams or operations teams within the company are taking from, say, like a monolithic application type direction to a services type direction.
Yep.
There's obviously going to be people that have more expertise in those areas than others in the company. So those people are selected to make the decision how that transition should happen.
Sure.
What's your advice to companies, organizations that are doing that, using that model to shift the paradigm so that they don't, to avoid that center of excellence?
Yep.
When there is a need to make sure that it's done, I don't want to say correctly, because I mean,
Right.
but,
Sure.
but make sure that it
So
doesn't go
we're doing these things and they're not right. And we want to make an architectural shift or a big shift towards the way that we think is more right, right? And so to do that, we want to bring together people that have had experience maybe going through that journey elsewhere or have experience with the new technologies that we want to bring in. My advice to you is just don't treat that as a center of excellence. Think about community of practice. So I don't want those people on whiteboards just imagining things and then pushing out docs to us. I want them practicing. I want those people to come and use their skills to take a slice out of the architecture and build it in the right way and demo that to everyone. Show everyone the practice of how do we do that. And it's even better when the people that have all the expertise doing that go and start building in that fashion. If they bring along 1 or 2 other people from the organization and make them part of that team for that 6 or 8 weeks, whatever it takes, make them part of that team so that the practice immediately can start to spread. So, like, of course, you're going to pull your experts together, but don't just have the experts in the room. When you only have the experts in the room, you don't actually have the experts in the room, right?
Yeah, this stuff is contextual, so they cannot build the right solution unless they're interacting with the teams that are going to use it. So that would be impossible in my opinion. They might get lucky, I guess, but having them in early, getting that feedback early, and something I like to do as soon as they start to get it and they're starting to figure it out, I want them to go teach somebody else. Because that turns into a silo where you're the expert on thing that is the only person that can teach other people the thing. I can learn something from everybody in this room. I don't know what that is, but y'all all have something to teach me for sure. Just have to be looking for opportunities to do this, right? And we learn a lot by teaching. Do you have a question?
So I appreciate the distinction you drew between the centers of excellence and community of practice, but a lot of what you were alluding to when you used the word culture in the slides looked to me like basically saying how the org is defined. Where do you draw the line between having a community of practice and actually instituting like a team or something? Is it specifically if a product is what the outcome is, or is it some other thing?
So I want to make sure that I'm parsing the question properly, because I don't think I am. So do you mind if we just take that offline? Because I also recognize that people might be hungry, because it is about lunchtime. Yeah.
We're going to squeeze in one more,
All right.
because I really like this stuff, and we got complimented by the staff here yesterday for making it through the lunch line so efficiently. They're like, y'all are amazing. You just adapted.
Must be focused on flow,
Yeah.
not, it's good.
Nathan, I wonder if you can tell me, in the last 2 years I've intensely practiced DevOps. Although we know in computer science, software, what it is just not hardware. It's still, in many's mind, software equates to the same as an application.
Software equates
Software equates to the same as the word application. Many still looks at DevOps as an initiative for developers, how we can make their effort more successful. But yet, I've seen that there's actually more emphasis in getting the infrastructure folks on board than necessarily getting the developers on board. We both have to get them on board. If we don't, then all we really do is we're re-practicing stream programming with a different label. And it's just release management. It's not DevOps.
Yep.
How do we overcome that perception? I see that all the time in organizations. They come to me and say, we need to do software better. But really what they're saying to me is, that's everything, but that's not drivers, because we know that's software. That's not scripts. Really all we mean is that little thing which we call software wrongly, which is actually an application for the business.
Right. Yeah, so the question is there, we need to do software better is code for I want to ship features faster, right? And so the important thing there, and this is, for me, this is where failure becomes your biggest ally. When those systems break, let's make sure that we have everyone in the room to talk about and learn from that failure. We have systemic problems where all we're trying to do is move faster. How could we have detected this sooner? I don't care how we could have detected it sooner in production. Is there a way that we could have detected this sooner in your development practices, right? Could unit tests have caught this? So I think that that's very important. We have to expose that there are development practices that need to be changed. But then how could we have recovered faster? Maybe deploying out a software fix takes 24 hours or takes 8 days. I don't know what that takes, right? So there's an infrastructure and release management problem there as well. But at the end of the day, the important thing is this. We get together in the room and we understand what is the customer value that we're trying to deliver. And the truth is, the infrastructure doesn't matter if there are no applications running on that infrastructure. But the other side of that coin is, the application that runs on this laptop If you all would come crowd around here, I want to make it really important and really valuable. If we all crowd around my laptop, that's as much value as we can get out of that application. These two things are inextricably linked. They require both sides of it. And my experience with DevOps, and it's obviously very contextual, I consider myself a sysadmin. So I feel like DevOps is, there aren't enough developers in this room. Whereas your experience might be, I'm a developer, where are all the operations people? We're trying to fix their problem, right? And then go back and figure out, well, whose problem are we trying to fix? It's a problem for the customer that we're trying to fix. And let's all get on the same page about that.
Socio-technical systems. You need development to lay the track. You need operations to run the trains. But if there's not people or goods or anything of value on those trains, doesn't matter. If you've got the most brilliant serverless architecture in production across every cloud provider and there's zero traffic, you've got nothing, right? So,
I mean, the train that runs around the Christmas tree that you get to look at and watch, like that brings joy to me.
that's value then. Yeah. Kind of like Twitter, right?
Right.
On that note, I'll quit rambling and let everybody go eat lunch. I know you're hungry. Let's hear it
Thanks
one more
again.
time for Nathen.